Urina. Lin Chia murmured this name. Hey, why did you suddenly jump down? Jin Yan walked to the window and asked in confusion. Lin Chia stood in front of the club's entrance, remained silent for a long while, then looked up and said, I'm going out for a bit. Then he turned and ran off in a certain direction. Seeing Lin Chia leave inexplicably, Jin Yan had a string of question marks floating above her head. She shrugged and sat back down on the leather sofa. Suddenly her gaze fell on the black screen hanging at the top of the club's main hall, directly opposite the private room. On the screen's surface, white text outlined name after name, with each name followed by different numbers of sparkling crystals that emitted a dreamy glow under the blue-purple lights. Kento Kondo 0 crystals. Yota Nakura 1 crystal. Jin Yan read out the names engraved on the screen from bottom to top. What are those? It's the ranking of hosts across Japan, the blue-clothed host explained. When this club was first built, the master gathered all famous host clubs in Japan and held this ranking competition. 1 crystal represents a 100,000 yen tip from a customer, and the final popularity ranking is determined by the number of crystals. Unfortunately, just as this activity started, the world fell into chaos. All other host clubs went bankrupt and closed, leaving only us still on the list. Jin Yan's gaze swept across the screen. Most names had nothing behind them, not a single crystal, with only a few names having scattered crystals. Jin Yan clicked her tongue. Your business is really quite dismal, isn't it? At a time like this, who would still spend money at host clubs? Having 1 or 2 crystals is already quite good. The blue-clothed host laughed self-deprecatingly. Jin Yan's gaze gradually moved upward, finally fixing on the top of the list, and she let out a small exclamation. Why is this first-place name in gold? And why does he have a black obsidian instead of crystals behind his name? The blue-clothed host stared at that golden name for a long time, then smiled helplessly. That person is different from us. In a sense, this so-called ranking competition existed because of him alone, and even this largest host club in Japan belongs to him. He's the real owner here. There are no crystals after his name because this screen simply couldn't fit them all. On the first day the rankings were displayed, the master personally tipped him 10 billion yen, equivalent to 10,000 crystals, putting him at the top in Japan. From the moment this activity began, the outcome was already decided. Whether anyone participated, how many tips others received, whether doomsday came, none of that mattered. Even if he was the only participant, the master would ensure he took the throne of Japan's #1 host in the most glorious and impressive way. Japan's #1 host, Asaba Nanaya. Your master is quite domineering, isn't he? Jin Yan couldn't help but marvel. But this name, Asaba Nanaya. Nanaya. Jin Yan repeated this name over and over, and thinking of Lin Chia's expression just now, a bold idea suddenly emerged in her mind. She turned to look in the direction Lin Chia had gone, her mouth agape in shock. No way. Kazisai house. In the spacious room, Urina knelt alone at the table, 2 pairs of chopsticks neatly arranged on it. In front of her, 2 portions of pork cutlet rice had gone cold, completely untouched. Her hands on her knees were tightly clenched. She looked at the time on the wall and called out to the courtyard, Takuya, has Takeshiro returned? Kazisai Takuya entered the room, looked at the 2 portions of pork cutlet rice on the table with a complicated expression, and shook his head. Toe? Urina sighed helplessly, picked up the 2 cold portions of pork cutlet rice and turned toward the kitchen. Master, why don't you eat something first? Takeshiro just called home saying he won't be back for a while. Kazisai Takuya couldn't help saying, you've been with us suppressing riots all day, you're already very tired. If you don't eat something, your health will suffer. Urina stood still, her lips pressed together, saying nothing. Just then the sound of the door opening came from afar. Urina's eyes immediately lit up. She put down the pork cutlet rice and quickly ran outside. Takeshiro. As soon as she ran out of the room, she froze in place. She saw Amamiya Haruhide carrying a box on his back, looking at her helplessly with a sword-carrying youth following behind him. Brother Amamiya. Urina smiled bitterly. Takeshiro hasn't returned? Amamiya Haruhide looked around and asked. No. Amamiya Haruhide frowned slightly and sighed helplessly. Brother Amamiya, have you eaten? Urina adjusted her mood and asked with a smile. I've eaten. Amamiya Harhide was halfway through his sentence when his peripheral vision caught the two cold portions of pork cutlet rice on the table. After a moment of silence he changed his words. I've eaten a little but I'm not full yet. Could you make us something more to eat? Of course, wait a moment, I'll go make a few more dishes. Urina turned and walked into the kitchen. Soon she came out carrying several plates of steaming hot dishes. Amamiya Harhide took a few bites, looked at Urina who was sitting quietly opposite them without touching her chopsticks, and said helplessly, how does it look with you just watching us eat? Have some too. When Takashiro returns we can make another portion. Seeing that Amamiya Harhide had spoken up, Urina hesitated for a moment, then picked up her bowl and began eating large mouthfuls as if she was starving. Seeing this, Amamiya Harhide smiled slightly. Let me introduce you. This is the Valkyrie Blade Master Hashimi Shota. Hello, I'm Shota. Hashimi Shota bowed politely. Urina bowed back in return. This was the first time Amamiya Harhide had brought another Blade Master home to meet Urina. Brother Amamiya, has something happened? Urina asked after thinking for a moment. It's actually good news. Amamiya Harhide slowly put down his rice bowl and said seriously, we might have found the whereabouts of the last Magatsukami blade. Hearing these words, Urina's eyes lit up. Does that mean there's hope for this country? According to the prophecy, yes. Hashimi Shota wiped his mouth and replied, the biggest problem now is that, according to another prophecy, the location of the last Magatsukami blade is extremely dangerous. It would be very difficult for just me and Amamiya to obtain it. We need more Magatsukami masters to help. Amamiya Haruki looked at Urina and said, although I have now collected 8 Magatsurugi, not all of them have wielders. Actually, we can only use my Amakudari, Shota's, Muki, and Furuhara Yashiki's, Kamikakashi. Kamikakashi's power is more focused on support, so those with real combat power are only me and Muki. This is not enough. We need the power of one more sword wielder. Urina lowered her head, looked at Tizu at her waist and replied without any hesitation, I understand, I'll go with you. Little sister, you agreed so readily? Hashimi Shota carefully examined the girl who was only 13 or 14 years old in front of him and couldn't help but remind her, we're not clear about the situation there. If Muki's prophecy this time is correct, there really is a risk of death. I'm not afraid. Urina's eyes were full of determination without any fear. The situation in this world is getting worse. Although Takashiro is killing corpse beasts everywhere to protect people, this can only solve the immediate crisis. Only by combining the 9 swords to create another world and transferring everyone there can we fundamentally solve the problem. Hashimi Shota stood there stunned. Your perspective is really far-reaching, isn't it? Don't compare her with others her age. She carries the royal blood of the Yuri family. Amamiya Haruki smiled slightly. The inheritors of royal blood have intelligence that ordinary people can't match. Are you implying that I'm stupid? Am I? Hashimi Shota. Q. Actually, I originally wanted to ask Takashiro to come with us. Amamiya Haruki ignored Hashimi Shota's resentful gaze and continued. But the problem is, Muki's prophecies aren't absolutely correct. If we take Takashiro with us and the prophecy turns out to be wrong, even half a day's delay would result in millions of deaths from the rampage of corpse beasts. Among us, Takashiro is the strongest and has the highest mobility. He can reach anywhere immediately when corpse beasts appear. So after much thought, the safest approach is to have Takashiro stay behind to protect people. If we confirm the true location of the last Magatsurugi, and the nearby dangers exceed our capabilities, we can call Takashiro then. This way we can minimize both risks and casualties. After listening to Amamiya's analysis, Hashimi Shota's mouth twitched slightly. Fine, I admit I'm an idiot. I understand. Urina quickly finished her last few bites of food and stood up from her seat. Let's go now, I'll call Takashiro on the way. The night grew deeper. Lin Chia's figure swiftly moved through the deserted streets, heading quickly in a certain direction based on the memories in his mind. In his mind, he recalled the scene of Yuri Takashiro slaying the corpse beast and then tiredly rushing away. Under the Red Moon's corruption, this human circle had completely become a chaotic place full of dangers. He wondered how the siblings were doing now. Had Amamiya Haruki found the remaining 2 Magatsurugi? Various thoughts churned in his mind as anxiety gradually spread. As he got closer to the Kazamatsuri house, suddenly, a thunderous explosion came from above. Lin Chia frowned and looked up. In the dark night sky, a blood-colored crack suddenly split open in the void, like a broken mirror corner. An 8-armed giant beast covered in black liquid was slowly emerging from the crack, crashing down from the sky. Boom! The ground beneath trembled slightly as rolling smoke billowed up. Lin Chia's expression immediately turned grim. A corpse beast? Another corpse beast? It had been less than an hour since Yuri Takashiro killed one corpse beast and left to chase another. Yet another corpse beast appeared in the same area? Isn't the frequency of corpse beast appearances too high? Moo! The 8-armed giant beast covered in black liquid stood amid the blazing ruins, roaring fiercely at the sky, its copper bell-like eyes blood-red in the darkness. Many residents ran out of buildings on both sides in panic, screaming in terror, frantically crowding away from the corpse beast's direction. One after another, the elderly, weak women and children were knocked down and mercilessly trampled by the subsequent crowds. In their painful cries for help, no one looked back, let alone stop to give them a chance to breathe. Under the influence of the Red Moon's contaminating force, they had completely lost their basic ethical sense. The evil in human nature was infinitely magnified, trampling this city like those hideous and disgusting corpse beasts. The corpse beasts were killing people, and the evil of human nature was also killing people. Seeing this scene, Lin Chia quickly raised his hand and pressed into the void. Brilliant magic arrays opened in the air, and numerous mysterious care workers were summoned, rushing into the crowd to rescue those being trampled while protecting them from being hurt by the corpse beast's attack waves. The spirit of the Yata mirror had been taken away by Lin Chia, and nothing in this human circle could restrict the use of taboo anymore. Seeming to sense the spiritual waves coming from Lin Chia, the 8-armed corpse beast's blood-red eyes looked down at Lin Chia on the street. It growled lowly, suddenly raising a giant claw like a heavy mountain crashing down. The howling wind lifted Lin Chia's clothes. His eyes narrowed, and without choosing to use any taboo, he silently took down the silver sword from his back. The sword of Kusanagi. Lin Chia had no divine power, so naturally he couldn't activate this divine weapon like Susanoo, but the can-cut-anything property attached to the blade didn't need any power to activate. The black giant claw rapidly expanded in Lin Chia's eyes. At this moment he raised the sword of Kusanagi in his hand and made a light slash above his head. Boom! The silver blade cut through the giant claw as easily as cutting paper. 2 heavy pieces of flesh crashed to the ground, raising clouds of dust. Lin Chia held the sword of Kusanagi, his figure turning into a streak of night rushing out, about to fly toward the corpse beast's neck when a point of light suddenly flashed in the sky. A terrifying beam full of destructive energy descended from the sky, instantly engulfing the corpse beast's form. The rippling aftermath lifted Lin Chia's clothes. He raised one hand in front of him and looked up at the sky. In the night sky, a girl wearing a tattered coat was carrying a 10-meter-tall pixel cannon, with thick smoke pouring from its muzzle. Billowing smoke surged from the deep pit in the ground. Pale blue light wandered between the cracks in the earth. The giant octopus-like corpse beast had now turned into wisps of red dust, dissipating into the air, leaving not even a trace of remains. Looking at that exaggeratedly shaped cannon, Lin Chia's jaw dropped in shock. Is that thing a Star Destroyer cannon dismantled from a spaceship? One shot killed a boundless realm corpse beast? In the sky, Jin Yen lightly waved her hand, and that giant cannon dissolved into pixels, flowing like water into a ring on her fingertip before disappearing. She put her hands in her pockets, took a step from under the night sky, and appeared before Lin Chia in the next moment. Pale blue flame embers rose in the air, the sound of fleeing residents echoed in the distance. Jin Yen looked at Lin Chia before her with a smile, raised her hand and waved it in the air. Hello there, King of Hosts Chinyu Chia? Lin Chia. What host? Lin Chia turned his head to the side and said expressionlessly, You've got the wrong person. Come to think of it, looking carefully, you really do have the qualities of a top host. Jin Yen looked him up and down and couldn't help saying, Come back to Shangxia society with me, we need top talents like you in our society. Lin Chia suddenly felt that this Shangxia society's president's thought process was quite different from normal people. Why are you here? Lin Chia changed the subject. Oh, I came to explore the cultural situation in this human circle, to facilitate our actions. Of course, if it happens to be on the way, I'd also like to see what the wealthy lady who put a 1,000,000,000 bounty on you looks like. The latter half is your real intention, right? Hee hee. Jean Yen smiled without denying it. She looked back at the residents fleeing in chaos, her eyes narrowing slightly. However, the situation here is indeed quite concerning. Lin Chia looked up at the sky. Under the night, it was completely empty and his brows furrowed tightly. From the previous situation, Yuzuri Takashiro should have been everywhere killing corpse beasts to protect the public safety. But now this corpse beast had appeared for so long, yet there was still no sign of him. Did he give up hunting corpse beasts and go straight home? Or were the corpse beasts appearing too frequently, so fast that even Yuzuri Takashiro couldn't keep up? The corpse beasts' appearances were random. Although with Yuzuri Takashiro's strength, it wouldn't take long to kill one corpse beast. If they appeared too frequently, with multiple beasts appearing in different locations at the same time, even he couldn't handle them all immediately. If it was the former situation, that would be fine, but if it was the latter, it would mean that the human circle wasn't far from true collapse. Lin Chia's expression was extremely grave. Boom dash. The low roar of an engine suddenly came from beside him. Lin Chia came to his senses and saw a pixel-assembled McLaren with post-apocalyptic paint job had appeared beside him at some point. Its low chassis almost touched the road, and its grayish-yellow slightly rusty body had a unique sense of power and beauty amid the dust. It was like a beast that had fought its way out of the apocalypse, now crouching on the broken road, growling deeply. Jean Yen sat in the driver's seat, holding the steering wheel with one hand and honked the horn. Get in. Where did you get this car? What's so hard about creating a car? Next time when there's a chance, I'll let you ride the cruise ship I create. Jean Yen shrugged. After hesitating for a moment, Lin Chia opened the door, got in and fastened his seatbelt. He turned his head to see Jean Yen looking at him with a peculiar expression. Why are you looking at me? Nothing, I just suddenly thought that if my dad knew there was a king of hosts sitting in my passenger seat, he'd probably chase me around the world with a knife. Jean Yen stuck out her tongue. Hold on tight. With a roar, the McLaren shot forward, disappearing at the end of the road in the blink of an eye. A few minutes after they left, a white-clothed figure flashed across the sky like lightning and landed in the deep pit that Jean Yen had just blasted. Yuzuri Takashiro slowly stood up straight, his white clothes now crimson all over. Didn't make it. His gaze swept the surroundings, his eyes slightly focusing. He reached out to catch a few wisps of red dust still floating in the air, surprise appearing in his eyes. This corpse beast has already been dealt with? By whom? Amamiya Haruhiai's image quickly appeared in Yuzuri Takashiro's mind, but was then dismissed. Brother Amamiya's rain collapse couldn't blast a corpse beast to pieces. He pondered for a long time but couldn't think of anyone else who could do this. He shook his head and was about to turn and leave when a crisp phone ring sounded from his pocket. Hello, sister. On the road under the night sky, Lin Chia gazed out the window for a long time before speaking. Actually, I have many questions I want to ask you. I know what you want to ask. Jean Yen spoke leisurely. What exactly is that hospital? Why were those gods locked inside? Why did it choose you? What's my zodiac sign? And what's my ideal type? Leave out the last two questions. Scorpio. Likes handsome guys over 180 centimeters tall with fair skin, good looks, long legs and abs. Lin Chia's mouth twitched slightly. I'm not interested. But among these questions I can only answer those two. Jean Yen said helplessly, as for the first three questions I don't know either. Isn't it yours? No, I just brought it over from a mysterious place, I don't know what it is either. After coming here it seemed to come alive, taking me through the fog frantically. Whenever it released a white light, a figure would be drawn from the fog into a hospital room, becoming a patient there. You mean it's not you controlling the hospital but the hospital itself absorbing those patients? How could I have such ability? I was only 7 or 8 years old back then, still a fragile little girl. The only thing I could do was punch down that crooked tree in the courtyard to relieve my fear a bit. Then why did it end up in my mind? It chose you itself. Jean Yen turned to look at Lin Chia and said seriously, after collecting 6 patients, it guided me to come to Tsangnan to find you. Why did it choose me? How would I know? You'll have to ask it. Jin Yen shrugged. Perhaps you're the protagonist of destiny? The chosen one of heaven and earth? Like those written in novels. Nonsense. Lin Chia rolled his eyes and continued asking, then what about those 3 divine artifacts you took away? That I know about. A reminiscent look appeared in Jin Yen's eyes. Back then, following the hospital's guidance to Tsongnan, a strange person shrouded in shadows with a red-pupiled black eye on their forehead found me and gave me a letter. I don't know who sent the letter, but they wrote that if I wanted to find a way home, I needed to protect your life in the upcoming catastrophe. In that letter, they also included instructions for a strange formation that used 3 divine artifacts as focal points. But I didn't have any divine artifacts, so I could only enter that hospital and figure out how to get the artifacts from the patients. Fortunately, with my cultivation level at that time, I could open 3 ward doors, so I went and made bets with each of them. Hearing this, Lin Chia nodded slightly. Jin Yen's description matched perfectly with Black Eye's account and the descriptions from Nix and others. But how did you win? Those were 3 deities. Their minds weren't quite right. It wasn't hard to win if you found their weak spots. Jin Yen smiled mysteriously. I have an innate ability to glimpse the patterns of the Tao for short periods. Using this ability, I roughly understood their individual situations. In the first ward, I bet with Nix on who could create something the other had never seen and couldn't understand. Then what? Then I showed her this. Jin Yen raised her hand, revealing complex patterns intertwined on her hand's back, mysterious and emanating an enigmatic aura. What is this? Lin Chia asked, puzzled. Nix asked the same question, so she lost and gave me her bracelet. Jin Yen avoided the question with a slight smile. In the second ward, I competed with Merlin in predicting fate. In the final round, I let him try to see my fate, but he couldn't, so he lost too and gave me his crystal ball. What about the third ward? What did you bet with Bragi? We didn't bet anything. I saw he was lonely in there, so I made him a harp using pixels and traded it for his ring. Jin Yen couldn't help but sigh. He had 7 rings in total, and after I traded for one, he wanted to trade 2 more rings for a pan flute and a harmonica, but unfortunately I couldn't make those instruments. Afterward, I secretly followed you around, and after you returned home, I set up the formation with the 3 artifacts under your house. Then I left. So that's how it was. Lin Chia nodded thoughtfully. But who exactly are you? Why couldn't even Merlin see through your fate? He asked, puzzled. That's a secret. Jin Yen had no intention of telling him. She looked out the window and said, looks like we've arrived at the place you mentioned. Let's get off. Lin Chia also saw the Kazisai family's landmark building under the night sky. He got off the car and walked straight toward the Kazisai family's main gate. Jin Yen waved her hand to dismiss the McLaren and followed closely behind him. This is the Yakuza family's headquarters? Jin Yen carefully examined the Japanese compound in front of her and spoke with surprise. It looks quite modest. This isn't the headquarters, it's just their family head's residence. The siblings don't like living in mansions, so they rented this compound. The security seems pretty weak. Don't people come for revenge? They don't need security. In all of Japan, no one can harm those siblings. While talking, Lin Chia walked to the door and knocked. After a long while, silence remained behind the door. No one home. Lin Chia knocked hard twice more and finally a figure opened the door. It was a young man wearing a black kimono with cherry blossom patterns. Lin Chia had seen him before. When they were in front of the Black Kill Organization building, he was the one who brought people to invite Yuzurina back to inherit the Kazisai family leadership. His name was Kazisai Takuya? Mr. Chia? Kazisai Takuya recognized Lin Chia at a glance, his eyes showing intense joy. You're back? Yes, where is your family head? She left with Mr. Amamiya and a young man called Hashimi Shota. Amamiya and Shota? Lin Chia was stunned hearing these 2 names. What are they doing? Mr. Amamiya said he found the location of the last Magatsukami sword, but he needed the family head's help. They've been gone for over an hour. The last Magatsukami sword? Lin Chia clearly remembered that when he left the human circle before, Amamiya Haruki had 7 Magatsukami swords in his possession. Now it seems he had found another one. The 9 Magatsukami swords were about to be united? Did they say where they went? No, they didn't mention where the last Magatsukami sword was. I see. If they return, tell them I'll be waiting at the Asaba Club. Yes. Unable to meet the Yuzuri siblings, Lin Chia could only turn and leave reluctantly. Amamiya Haruki, he's that young man searching for the path of salvation, right? Jin Yen pondered for a moment. I heard Wei Dong mention him. Yes. Are you worried about them? Lin Chia let out a long sigh. Unfortunately, I don't even know where they are. I can't help even if I want to. Jin Yen thought for a moment. I can't help you find people, but if you want to deal with those corpse beasts, our evil association has something that could help. Hearing these words, Lin Chia's eyes lit up. What is it? That thing is too big. I left it on the cruise ship and didn't bring it here. Once we go back and I have someone bring it over, you'll know. Lin Chia stared into Jin Yen's eyes, falling into silence. What do I need to give in return? Give in return? Jin Yen thought seriously for a moment. For you? Owing me a favor would be enough. A favor? Just that. What else? You're not as strong as me now, nor do you have as vast an influence as I do. How could I expect to get anything else from you right now? Jin Yen smiled. Besides, you carry the divine mental hospital with you. You're destined to reach the peak of this world sooner or later. Trading such a small matter for a favor from you isn't a bad deal at all, is it? Perhaps my hope of returning home lies with you. Your home? Where is it? Jin Yen fell silent for a moment, slowly closed her eyes and shook her head. I don't know. When Lin Chia and Jin Yen returned to the club, the members of Shangxia were already waiting upstairs. Chairman, everything is ready. We can start the meeting. Knight walked up to Jin Yen and said. Jin Yen nodded, then seemed to think of something and turned to Lin Chia. You should join us as an observer too. Me? Lin Chia asked puzzledly. What meeting? Jin Yen smiled slightly and pointed to the ground beneath his feet. Of course, it's the strategic meeting for destroying the human circle. 2 minutes later, Lin Chia sat down at the conference table alongside Jin Yen, while other Shangxia members turned their gazes toward him, their eyes filled with surprise. The topic of this meeting was to discuss how to destroy the world's largest human circle. Most of those present were core members of Shangxia, with Lin Chia being the only non-member participating in this meeting. This was actually a first in Shangxia's history, but since it was the chairman's decision, others naturally had no objections. Now that everyone's here, let's begin. Jin Yen sat at the head of the conference table, his gaze sweeping across everyone, no longer showing his previous playful demeanor, but instead emanating a subtle authority. Wei Dong. Yes. Wei Dong stood up from his position, cleared his throat and began seriously. I am the sentinel in charge of this human circle destruction plan, Wei Dong, and also the designer of this destruction plan. Next, I'll briefly introduce our action plan to everyone. He raised his hand, pressed the remote control, and the slides behind him began to play. I believe everyone has already learned before coming that this is currently the world's largest known human circle, with a total area exceeding 400,000 square kilometers, housing 50 million people. The divine artifact supporting this human circle is the Yata Mirror, one of the 3 great artifacts of Takamagara. Its area is too vast and our previous core explosion plan would hardly be effective here. Additionally, the mysteriously appearing corpse beasts and rioting crowds have created major obstacles for our land-based destruction methods. As he explained, the brows of the Shangxia members present began to furrow. Among the Shangxia core members present, only some who specialized in combat, infiltration and intelligence gathering had experience entering other human circles. The other portion, consisting of scientists and engineers who couldn't fight, had stayed in Utopia, after being rescued by Jin Yen from various divine nations' human circles. It was precisely because they heard this destruction target would be particularly challenging that they voluntarily asked to come with Jin Yen, but they hadn't expected things to be this complicated. Our previous explosion plan indeed isn't sufficient anymore. A bespectacled scholar calculated on paper for a moment before saying seriously, to blow up land of this scale, even with the chairman's special pixel bombs, we'd need an astronomical number of explosives. We simply don't have that much time. What if we calculate the land structure in advance and create a 3D model? Would it be possible to then use precise point explosions to directly destroy the entire land structure? Make it sink. A structural engineer suggested. The difficulty with precise point explosions is that we must obtain very complete structural data for this land. It's the same problem as before. The land area is too large and we don't have enough time to achieve that level of detail. Is it possible to flood this place with a tsunami without destroying the land? This is an island nation after all, I think that would be faster. You mean we directly detonate the crust, causing structural changes to trigger a tsunami? That's a good idea. No, it won't work. After all, this is just a reality reflection created by the Yata mirror. Detonating the crust here won't cause collision between plates. Then perhaps we could directly detonate Mount Fuji? Even if Mount Fuji fully erupts, the damage range couldn't cover the entire human circle, and the biggest problem would actually be the volcanic ash. After Wei Dong finished speaking, the think tank Jin Yen brought from Utopia began frantically proposing ideas and discussing calculations, making the entire conference room atmosphere lively. Jin Yen, sitting beside Lin Chia, couldn't help yawning twice and simply leaned back in his chair to rest his eyes. Lin Chia's jaw dropped in shock. These people were seriously discussing how to use a combination of science and forbidden arts to eliminate a country. Online art courses. And this destruction would be physical annihilation in the truest sense, not planning to leave even a piece of land behind. They wanted to sink this island nation. At this moment, Lin Chia vaguely realized that Shangxia's most terrifying aspect wasn't the human ceiling Jin Yen sitting beside him, nor those powerful ability users, but rather this group of seemingly defenseless yet knowledgeable mad scientists. As time passed, plan after plan was proposed and rejected, until only 3 options remained on the blackboard. Chairman, which method do you think we should adopt? A scientist asked eagerly, looking at Jin Yen who was already snoring loudly. Jin Yen suddenly woke from his sleep, rubbed his drowsy eyes, looked at the string of physics formulas on the blackboard that seemed like hieroglyphics, fell silent for a moment, then turned to Lin Chia. What do you think? Lin Chia. You're asking me? I don't understand these things either. These methods are too complicated, I can't. Do you have a simpler, more effective method? Jin Yen's eyes lit up. Quick, tell us. Everyone perked up their ears, waiting for this mysterious external advisor to speak. Lin Chia's mouth twitched slightly and after much hesitation he still expressed his inner thoughts. I think if we want to destroy this human circle, why not deal directly with the divine artifact supporting it? You mean directly destroy the Yata mirror? Wei Dong shook his head. The Yata mirror is a divine artifact. We can't destroy it, we can't even cause the slightest damage to it unless... Unless what? Jin Yen asked curiously. Unless we have the legendary Kusanagi sword that can cut through all things, but that divine artifact should be in Takamagara, we can't get it. Hearing this, everyone present sighed helplessly. How could a divine artifact from Takamagara be so easily obtained? The air fell into dead silence. I have it. Just then a voice suddenly spoke up. Everyone looked toward the source of the voice, only to see Lin Chia sitting there with a somewhat peculiar expression. You have what? Jin Yen asked. Lin Chia silently reached out his hand and drew the silver sword from his back. The Kusanagi sword. The crowd of Shangxia members stared at the sword in Lin Chia's hand, falling into dead silence. Mr. Lin must be joking. The man in the suit laughed awkwardly. What we're discussing here is the Kusanagi sword, one of the 3 sacred treasures of Takamagara. According to legend, this sword has always been in Susanu's possession, his most valued treasure. Mr. Lin, where did you get this sword from? Takamagara snatched it from Susanu. The suited man's mouth twitched slightly. Mr. Lin, let's not joke around. If this really is the Kusanagi sword, wouldn't that mean you've already broken into Takamagara and personally snatched the most powerful divine weapon from Susanu's hands? Even fiction writers wouldn't dare write something like that. Lin Chia helplessly thrust the Kusanagi sword into the surface of the desk. The moment the blade touched the edge, the heavy desk instantly split in half from the center, the cut surface smooth as a mirror, incredibly sharp. I can't let go of it or it will cut through the building's soil and ocean, falling straight to the bottom of the deep sea. Just look at it like this. Lin Chia held the sword hilt, suspending it in the air. A terrifying killing aura surged from the blade, causing everyone present to change expression. Several people seemed to realize something and crowded closer to look. They saw 3 ancient characters inscribed on the blade spelling Kusanagi, and shock appeared on their faces. This. A scholar adjusted his glasses, examining it for a moment. This is really the Kusanagi sword. What? How can the Kusanagi sword be here? Mr. Lin, how did you get it out? The Shangxia members in the conference room erupted in chaos, gathering around the Kusanagi sword with eyes full of shock and curiosity. They couldn't understand how Lin Qie, a young man only at the infinite realm, could enter Takamagara and steal this divine weapon. Among everyone, only Jin Yan's expression remained relatively calm. She smiled watching her shocked subordinates, even feeling a bit of pride. Look at this. What does it mean to be chosen by fate? For someone carrying the mental hospital of the gods' host. No, someone chosen by fate. What's stealing a divine weapon? Even if he went to cut down Susanoo now, I wouldn't be too surprised. If we have the Kusanagi sword's help, everything will be different. A scholar excitedly erased all 3 plans from the blackboard and said. Lin Qie shook his head. It's not that simple. Although I have the Kusanagi sword, I don't have divine power and can't activate it. Even though it can cut through everything without external force driving it, it can't easily cut through the Yata mirror. Without divine power to drive it, we can use physics to give it enough external force. An explosives expert stood up, quickly walked to the blackboard and began calculating rapidly. Using divine power to drive the Kusanagi sword essentially gives it enough kinetic energy to cut through the Yata mirror, and we can transfer this level of kinetic energy to the Kusanagi sword through consecutive precision-controlled explosions. The Kusanagi sword itself can cut through anything, so neither earth nor seawater can create resistance. We just need to calculate a vertical trajectory from the sea surface straight to the mirror's surface, then place pixel explosives at specific points along this trajectory, controlling each explosion's propulsive force vertically downward, to add kinetic energy to the Kusanagi sword, making it ultimately powerful enough to shatter the Yata mirror. Now we know the vertical distance from sea level to mirror surface, zero resistance, gravitational acceleration, and the kinetic energy produced by each pixel bomb explosion. Plugging these into the formula, we can calculate the final number of detonations needed. The explosives expert wrote the final stroke on the blackboard, heavily dotted a number with chalk, circled it and spoke with gleaming eyes. 271 times. If we detonate 271 pixel explosives consecutively along the vertical trajectory from sea surface to the Yata mirror, we can give the Kusanagi sword enough kinetic energy to break the Yata mirror. Jin Yan nodded slightly, her gaze sweeping across everyone. Does anyone have anything to add? Other scholars calculated on paper for a moment, reached the same answer as the explosives expert and shook their heads. In that case, we'll proceed with this plan. Everyone pack up immediately and go set up the explosive empowerment trajectory at sea. The trajectory must be built within 1 day. Jin Yan decisively ordered. This human circle destruction operation. Let's call it Sword of Ultimate Evil. 10 minutes later. Lin Qie rubbed his tired eyes as he walked out of the conference room. The explosive empowerment trajectory concept was incredibly crazy. But fortunately the plan didn't require him to do anything except lend the Kusanagi sword to Shangxia, and take it back after destroying the Yata mirror. Although it was just lending a sword for Shangxia, they now owed Lin Qie a big favor. All Shangxia members were hurriedly packing their things, preparing to go set up the explosive empowerment trajectory at sea. The floor became increasingly quiet, and after some thought, Lin Qie still walked to the room where Jialan was sleeping. He closed the door, completely isolating the busy world outside, walked to Jialan's bedside and slowly sat down. Looking at Jialan's pale face with furrowed brows, Lin Qie let out a long sigh. The last bit of immortal power remaining in Jialan's body had locked her wounds, fixing her vital signs at that moment, keeping her alive, but similarly, immortal, also blocked Lin Qie's mortal divine domain from healing the Kusanagi sword's wound. That sword wound remained quietly on her body, like a bloodied amber. Now to heal Jialan's injuries, they could only wait for her to wake up voluntarily, transfer immortal elsewhere, and then let Lin Qie's miracle seep into her body. But she had been lying there for almost 2 days with no sign of waking, which made Lin Qie increasingly anxious. Could it be that the shattering of immortal had some negative impact on Jialan's spirit, which is why she couldn't wake up? Various thoughts surged through Lin Qie's mind, and just as he was in mental chaos, a figure walked into the room. I wondered where you were. Turns out you're hiding here with your wife? Jin Yan walked into the room, her gaze falling on the sleeping Jialan, raising an eyebrow. She's not my wife. When I saw you two appear in the cabin, your hands were tightly clasped together. Took me quite a while to separate you two. How is she not your wife? Jin Yan looked at Lin Chia suspiciously. You're not a player, are you? Lin Chia. How is her condition? Jin Yan asked. Her vital signs are all normal, but she remains in a coma. The specific reason is still unclear. A mysterious coma? Jin Yan walked to Jialan's side and gently placed her hand on Jialan's forehead. She slowly closed her eyes as if sensing something. What are you doing? Lin Chia asked curiously. Examining her, Jin Yan replied calmly. These medical devices can only show so much. You can examine her body just by placing your hand on her forehead? Is this also your ability? Yes. A moment later, Jin Yan withdrew her hand, her brows slightly furrowed. What's wrong? It's strange, Jin Yan spoke thoughtfully. There's a mysterious energy in her body. This energy's properties are approaching eternity, able to protect itself from external influences. Immortality? Lin Chia blurted out. Should be, but now these energies are shattered. Jin Yan turned to look at Lin Chia. Did she suffer some kind of trauma before? Lin Chia quickly recalled the immortality, carriage being slashed by the Almanomurakumo sword in Takamagara, and the second time when the immortality, shield on Lin Chia was cut. Jialan's immortality had shattered twice in an extremely short time. Yes. That explains it. Jin Yan nodded. What you call immortality should be an alternative form of time pause, though from a law perspective, this stasis has transcended the concept of time, infinitely approaching eternity. And this energy in her body was already showing signs of forming its own law. Forming its own law? Hearing this description, Lin Chia froze in place. His mind flashed back to the scene of Zhou Ping creating his sword law and ascending to godhood years ago. As if realizing something, he opened his mouth in shock, his eyes full of disbelief. You mean, she's about to become a god? Jin Yan's hand rested on Jialan's forehead as she couldn't help but marvel. The total amount of spiritual power in her mind is even greater than mine. She must have reached humanity's ceiling level long ago, but has been stuck at the step of forming law and ascending to godhood. Jialan is at humanity's ceiling. A bolt of lightning flashed through Lin Chia's mind. His mind quickly flashed through the scenes from releasing Jialan from the coffin to today. Thinking carefully, he had never seen Jialan break through any levels, never seen her release level pressure, and had no concept of how much spiritual power she actually possessed. Jialan had always been as strong as needed against the strong, and as weak as appropriate against the weak. Her punch might not be able to kill someone at the sea level, but her body could withstand attacks from gods. Since immortality isn't absolute defense, it means that its defensive upper limit is determined by Jialan's own level. The fact that she could withstand attacks from gods indicates that her level had reached an extremely high point. And the fact that the Almanomurakumo sword could cut through immortality means that Jialan definitely hadn't reached the level of gods. She was at the peak of humanity's ceiling. Then why is she in a coma now? Lin Chia returned to the initial question. Because the immortality power within her is reorganizing. What does that have to do with the coma? As I just said, her immortality is essentially a time pause derived from time law, and the process of reorganizing immortality is the process of solidifying flowing time around her into her own time. Seeing Lin Chia still confused, Jin Yan thought for a moment and added, Do you know about hydroelectric power? Yes. The principle of hydroelectric power is converting the kinetic energy contained in flowing water into electrical energy. Her situation is similar. To reorganize immortality and form her own law, she must draw time force from the flowing river of time around her and convert it into her own solidified time, which is immortality. In other words, she's eating time. And this is the only path for her to form her own law. During this process, her consciousness will sink into submergence, so naturally she can't wake up. I think she must have spent an extremely long time to cultivate her immortality to this level. By the way, I haven't asked, how old is she? Lin Chia was silent for a moment. Just over 2,000 years old. Jin Yan. At this moment, the scene of Jialan lying in the coffin once again appeared in Lin Chia's mind. So, During those 2,000 years Jialan lay in the coffin, she was absorbing time force to form the embryonic form of law within her body. It took 2,000 years and still couldn't form the law to become a god. Is the path to godhood through immortality really so difficult? So she can only wake up after the immortality within her completes reorganization? Correct. How long will that take? Don't know. Jin Yen shook her head. If we use her previous 2,000 years of sleep as a reference, the time until she wakes up should be measured in hundreds of years. However, when she wakes up again, the law within her body should be mostly formed. She should become a god then. Hundreds of years. Lin Chia's body trembled. After hundreds of years he would probably be nothing but dust, and only then would Jialan wake up? Seas turned to mulberry fields, stars shift positions, by then not just him, but whether the night watchman would still exist, whether the world would remain the same was uncertain. When she opens her eyes again, the world might be a completely different place. If hundreds of years seem so long, how vast must 2,000 years be? All beings reincarnate, dynasties change. For the first time, Lin Chia directly felt how pale and powerless time was in the face of immortality. Does this mean he'll never see Jialan again in this life? In his days, Jialan's last words to him kept rolling in his mind. Next time I want to hear you say it yourself, that you like me. Does he like her? After learning the truth about Cupid's arrow, there was no more confusion in Lin Chia's heart. He had only one answer. Yes, he likes Jialan. But until the final moment he hadn't been able to say those words to Jialan in person. He had thought he would still have a chance to make up for it, but now he realized he had lost even the chance to say these words. Lin Chia stood motionless, staring at Jialan's sleeping face, completely lost. His heart had never hurt so much before, not even when the Tiansong cloud sword pierced his body and penetrated his chest. It felt as if someone was holding a knife, brutally cutting up his heart that had just begun to feel warmth and affection, and throwing it into an abyss of cold despair. Jin Yen sensed the heavy sorrow emanating from Lin Chia and fell silent. Just as she was about to open her mouth to offer some comfort, the door opened again. The knight stood at the doorway and said to Jin Yen, "Chairman, please come with me." After a moment's hesitation, Jin Yen sighed, patted Lin Chia's shoulder and followed the knight out of the room. In the empty room, only Lin Chia remained standing alone. A gentle breeze rustled the white curtains by the window, lightly lifting Jialan's black hair spread across the bed. Her eyes, as peaceful as still water, remained closed, like an immovable rock in the river of time, existing for eternity. After a long while, Lin Chia stepped forward and slowly sat down beside the bed. He tucked Jialan's scattered black hair back under the blanket, held her soft hand and sat motionless like a silent statue. Honshu Island. A car sped along a deserted road. Yuzurina sat in the back seat looking out the window. Through the falling cherry blossoms, she could see a massive mountain peak covered in snow standing beneath the sky, and asked in surprise, "Mount Fuji? Why are we here?" "This is where we've deduced the location of the last calamity blade to be," Hashimi Shota shrugged and said. "From the 9 prophecies given by Warrior Princess, we've currently identified 3 correct ones: snow-covered gray earth, where cherry fire scatters, and sacred pilgrimage site. These 3 prophecies were quite vague. I searched all possible locations before but couldn't find the last calamity blade. It wasn't until yesterday morning when Shota received the final prophecy that we finally pinpointed this location," said Amamiya horrified. "What prophecy?" Yuzurina asked curiously. "Peak of rage and destruction." Yuzurina nodded in sudden understanding. In Japan, the only mountain that could be called the Peak of Destruction would probably be this massive active volcano. Combined with snow, cherry blossoms and pilgrimage site, it was almost certain that the last calamity blade was here. "But isn't this just a natural scenic area? Where's the danger?" asked Kabara Yashiki from the driver's seat. "Just because there wasn't danger before doesn't mean there isn't now," Amamiya Harhide spoke again. "In the prophecies there's also one called Land Guarded by Corpse Gods. Initially, based on other prophecies, we actually classified this as a false prophecy, because there was no place in all of Japan where so-called corpse gods gathered. But recently we realized the true meaning of this prophecy. Corpse gods. Yuzurina seemed to think of something. Corpse beasts? Are there corpse beasts gathered nearby?" "Yes," Amamiya Harhide nodded. That's why I said if the prophecy is wrong, then this mission shouldn't face any resistance. But if this prophecy is correct, then the danger level here will increase significantly. But even if there are corpse beasts here with the 4 of us Calamity Blade wielders working together, it shouldn't be too difficult, right? Let's hope so. As they spoke, the car had arrived at the foot of Mount Fuji. With the arrival of corpse beasts and frequent social unrest, the entire human circle had fallen into chaos. The once bustling scenic area was now completely deserted, and some buildings at the base of the mountain had been ransacked, with broken glass and dried blood scattered everywhere. Let's go, drive straight up. Amamiya Haruhide looked around. The prophecy mentioned snow-covered gray earth, indicating that the last Calamity Blade must be at a high altitude. No need to waste time down here. Kabara Yashiki grunted in agreement and stepped on the gas. The car quickly climbed up the winding mountain road, making Yuzurina's face turn pale. When the car reached the end of the road, Yuzurina and Hashimi Shota immediately jumped out and started vomiting by the roadside. Amamiya Haruhide got out of the car as if nothing had happened, his eyes narrowing as he gazed at the snow-covered peak above. It's really cold here. Kabara Yashiki closed the car door and rubbed his hands together, breathing out a cloud of vapor. It's still okay here. The higher we climb, the colder it gets. Are we going to the summit? Yes, Amamiya Haruhide nodded. If that blade is really on this mountain, the most likely place would be at the top. Yuzurina, who had finished vomiting, took a deep breath and slowly stood up to ask. By the way, what's the name of this Calamity Blade? The second of the 9 Calamity Blades, Mountain Burial, Amamiya Haruhide said calmly. Since its forging, no one has ever seen this blade and there has never been a blade master. It exists only in legend. Mountain Burial? Hashimi Shota looked up at the massive mountain before them. No wonder it's in a mountain. But how do you know it's at the summit? It's just a guess. Since Mountain Burial has never appeared before human eyes, it means it must be in a place extremely difficult for humans to reach, and on all of Mount Fuji, only the massive crater at the summit meets these conditions. I see. Little Yuzurina will need your 1,000 cranes to help us locate Mountain Burial. Amamiya Haruhide pointed to the snowy peak above. Even at the summit, the area is too vast for the 4 of us to search, and our climbing equipment isn't professional enough. There are some particularly steep places we can't reach. Leave it to me. Yuzurina placed her hand on the hilt at her waist and drew 1,000 cranes, halfway out. Clang. With a light sound, the white sword at her waist transformed into countless paper cranes, which flapped their wings and scattered into the air. After completing this, Amamiya Haruhide took a deep breath, looked at the towering mountain peak ahead and slowly said, "Let's go, we're climbing the mountain." Human circle. At the bottom of the deep sea, an immense mirror lay quietly on the seabed, reflecting everything above it. Streams of red essence surged from its broken edges, seeping into the seawater like fresh blood. Dense schools of fish tangled together, frantically tearing at each other. A large marine beast suddenly swept across the seafloor, opening its massive jaws to swallow them all, then crashed headfirst into a hard boulder, its eyes completely red as if possessed. Blood and red essence mixed with the ocean currents, transforming into rolling crimson waves, repeatedly crashing against the coastal land. A frenzied and violent aura spread like a plague. The red moon's contamination was gradually seeping into this world through the mirror's gaps. Under the dim sky, 2 consecutive blood-colored rifts rapidly spread. Giant beasts covered in black liquid struggled to squeeze through the rifts, plummeting from high above. Boom! Their massive forms crashed like mountains onto the towering buildings. These 100-meter-tall structures shattered like paper in an instant. Glass shards and building debris rained down like raindrops. Blood and fire spread wildly through the city, accompanied by countless screams and wails. The roars of 2 corpse beasts echoed like thunder across the sky. Roar, roar, roar. In a dusty street corner, an electronics store had been trampled into ruins by the corpse beasts. An old radio tumbled to the ground. Breaking news. 1 minute ago, 2 black giant beasts simultaneously descended on central Osaka. The commercial center, including Dotonbori and Saishimbashi, has been completely reduced to ruins with numerous civilian casualties. Meanwhile, we received news that the white-robed god killed a giant beast in Hokkaido half a minute ago and is now en route to Osaka. Residents in central Osaka, please remain calm. Wait. According to latest reports, blood-colored rifts have also appeared above Kyoto and Fukuoka, with 2 more giant beasts about to descend. 4 giant beasts appearing in different regions at the same time. Dawn Broadcasting reminds all residents under beast attack. Before disaster strikes, stay calm and, time permitting, proceed in an orderly manner to nearby underground shelters. Bang! Before the broadcast ended, SUVs came crashing through, crushing the radio to pieces. Slow down. Hiato. Slow down. In the SUV's passenger seat, a woman clutched the handle tightly, her face filled with panic. In her arms, an infant was crying with all its might. Slow down, my ass. Didn't you see that monster? If it catches up, we're all dead. A muscular man gripped the steering wheel, his eyes bloodshot as he stared ahead. There are people ahead. Slow down. On the road ahead of the SUV, masses of residents were pouring out of buildings, frantically running away from the direction of the beast. The wide street was now packed with people. The bright headlights cut through the dusty street, illuminating the chaotic crowd ahead. The man gripped the steering wheel tightly, glanced at the rearview mirror, and saw the beast covered in black liquid roaring as it approached. He stared at the crowd ahead, and after a moment, a hint of madness appeared in his bloodshot eyes. Instead of slowing down, he floored the accelerator. With the engine's roaring explosion, the SUV began speeding toward the chaotic crowd at a terrifying pace. Are you crazy? Hiato. What are you doing? What am I doing? The man gritted his teeth and spoke word by word. I want to live. The SUV crashed directly into several people at the edge of the crowd, sending them flying like kites. Red blood sprayed out, their bodies falling into the crowd with dull thuds, followed by a series of screams. As the engine roared, this blood-stained SUV, like a ruthless beast devoid of humanity, charged toward the crowd with bared fangs and claws. Bang bang. Just then 2 gunshots rang out from afar. The SUV's tires were instantly blown out. With a piercing screech, the vehicle spun out of control and crashed into a nearby shop. Damn it, who's got a death wish? The man clutched his bleeding forehead in pain, unprecedented rage filling his eyes. He grabbed a metal baseball bat from the back seat and burst out of the car door. Just as he was about to curse, a cold gun barrel was pressed against his forehead. It was a man wearing a black kimono, riding a motorcycle. His right hand held the gun and his cold eyes stared at the man with the bat. Black Kill Group. Hayato swallowed hard when he saw the distinctive emblem on the man's chest. Running people over? Are you asking to die? Forgot whose territory this is. The man spoke coldly. That monster's right behind us. If we don't run, we'll all die together. Hayato pointed at the people fleeing frantically and shouted, they're running so slowly anyway, they'll eventually be crushed by the monster, so what if I run them over? At least I can survive. What do their lives matter to me? You're just a bunch of gangsters. What right do you have to meddle? Think you're some kind of saviors? We were never saviors. The man pressed the gun barrel against Hayato's forehead and spoke calmly. We're just outlaws with guns and knives, but in this world, whoever holds the guns makes the rules. Break our rules, and no matter who you are, you'll pay the price. Bang! The thunderous gunshot rang out, a spray of blood erupted, and a bullet hole appeared in Hayato's forehead. His bloodshot eyes stared at the man in disbelief as he fell backward. The man expressionlessly raised his gun, pointing at the woman holding the infant. If you don't want to die, follow these people and keep going forward. There will be people ahead guiding you to the shelter. After speaking, he holstered his gun, mounted his motorcycle, and rode straight toward the other end of the road, against the flow of fleeing people. Looking down from the highest point in Osaka, one would see that these residents fleeing from the corpse beast's feet were maintaining relative order as they moved toward the nearest shelter, under the deterrence of Black Kill Group members on motorcycles. Any troublemakers or those who harmed other civilians died by their bullets. Under the sky tinted by the red moon, guns and knives became the most effective means of communication. Meanwhile, at the end of the broken road, a red-clad figure drenched in blood, holding a spear, was staggering toward this place.